Ramblings of a semi-coherent drunk. You must be crazy or high. The cat rolls over. Time to toast the other side. The fat son of a bitch rolls his massive girth to expose his back to the space heater that he sits way too close to. I bought the thing a few weeks ago, and it is his new god. I come home from work at insane hours, open the door to find him perched in front of the dormant heater, with a look on his face as if to say, "Hey, cool, you're here now. Turn it on?" As long as there is orange glowing heat, he is a happy cat. I could dump my beer on him, and as long as the heater stays on, I doubt his sluggish form would even move. I worry about starting any rant like this. I'm turning into Bukowski, yapping about my cats. It doesn't do well to start off stories with your fucking boring-ass inanimate cat. But the fat bastard amuses me. An inert object unless he's glomping you by jumping on your chest as you wake up and demanding affection. I mean, cats are cool, I guess. I'm more of a dog person. Grew up around dogs my whole life. Got a lot more fun out of them. But I suppose a cat is fine too. As I said, though, this one is a fuzzy lump on the carpet, damn near absorbing the entirety of the space heater. I take a sip of my beer. It is a nice, cozy Saturday evening. The woman is asleep next to me, and I haven't the desire to play a game or read a book. I sip again. I get a lot of flack for this, but I'll say it again. I'll take a drunk over a stoner any day. Most people roll their eyes and say something benign like, "I'd rather not deal with either." Well, I'd like to have an unending supply of chicken and a biscuit too, but that's not the life we're dealt. If I had to choose between the two, I'd pick the drunk. This is usually when people tell me, "But don't you know that most accidental murders occur under the influence of alcohol? Not to mention drunk driving, boosted egos, and a complete withdrawal from consequence. Don't you know that drunks do more harm than stoners?" All of that is true. No doubt in my mind about it. I've met plenty. Fuck. I've had a drunk man pull a 45 on me and shoot it in my general direction. So when it comes to drunken bad experiences, trust me when I say I have had my share. Yes, drinking tends to lend itself to let out the worst in people. Drunks are obnoxious, irritating, barely intelligible assholes who tend to think nothing of taking a swing at you for glaring at their beer or their bird. Drunks are all that and so much more. And all of the more bit is all bad stuff. I will 100% grant you that. So granting all of that, what makes me prefer that over potheads? I mean, I've been high. I used to smoke up quite a bit in high school, but I could probably count the number of times I've smoked up in my adult life on my fingers. It never did it for me. Not me personally, but... See, unless I'm blackout drunk, I still have the ability to reason with myself. I can take a moment and ask myself, "Seth, you can't stand straight. Had to close one eye to read the bathroom sign. You aren't getting laid tonight. You're too sloppy. Maybe call it a night?" And at least 3 times out of 5, I might listen to myself. Cut my losses, go home, and have a much better time than the 2 out of 5 I don't and end up stumbling home alone and dizzy anyways. Never had that experience with pot. See, for one thing, when I was in high school, my only goal was getting laid. And I failed at that sober. Turns out that other potheads didn't have much going for them either. Every weekend was a sausage fest of pathetic assholes sitting around playing video games or watching movies, laughing like dipshits. No drive, no oomph. I didn't know how to put it then, but I'm pretty sure I had a strong feeling that most of the people I was getting high with at the time probably weren't going to go very far in life. There were a few musicians among them, but they were just as crap sober as they were high, and contrary to popular belief, being high doesn't turn you into a virtuoso. I highly suspect that all the amazing musicians who also smoked pot were probably good musicians without being high as well. This is turning into an anti-weed rant, and it's not meant to be. Truth be told, I frankly don't give a damn about weed. To the point where the only reason I'm glad it's legal is so fucksticks in sweatpants and dreadlocks don't keep approaching me on public transportation begging me to sign some fucking stupid petition to get it legalized. You know the sort. The kind of idiot who's going on and 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 on about how hemp was made illegal for paper sales in the 20s, that hemp has many uses beyond its medicinal use, and that overall it's the wonder plant of all creation. It cures cancer, dyslexia, hemorrhoids. It always seemed to me a great amount of effort to avoid just saying, "Hey dude, I just want to get high without going to jail for it." I suppose that's the other reason I dislike potheads. The pathetic attempt at subterfuge. A drunk would say as much. Drop all the lofty, high-minded bullshit that you couldn't give a flea's hard-on of a shit about, and just say you want to get high. That's cool. I can dig it. It's not for me, but I certainly don't want to see people going to jail for wanting to hang around being lazy and a bit laughy all the time. Of the more solid points that have been made on the subject, the criminalization of marijuana possession are the best. It's not a fight-or-flight drug like PCP or any of the harder ones, and I'd agree that its immediate effect is one that has milder consequences than alcohol. You shouldn't go to jail for it. I'm all for that. So that's 2 reasons I'm glad it's legalized in my state. Where you plithy fucking assholes lose me is when you insist on its benevolence. One of the most common arguments I hear counter to my preference of drunks over stoners is that weed is so much better for you than alcohol and cigarettes, which are legal and taxed by the state and derp. This strikes me as a particularly stupid argument. For one thing, in this day and age, if you're unaware of how bad cigarettes are for you, you're retarded. As in, you must be a mentally handicapped person who is not allowed financial independence in the most literal of senses. Yes, smoking cigarettes is bad for you. Everyone is aware of that. Drinking alcohol. Alcohol is it's essentially poison. It's a poison that your body breaks down in a specific sort of way, and that's cool. All right, cool. Yeah. And it gets you drunk instead of killing you. But if you drink enough of it, it will kill you. Okay. Understood. Yes, marijuana does not do that. Somehow, even understanding this and even 100% agreeing with it, I was always preached to by the densest of people who somehow could directly explain to me the chemistry of THC and its effects on the brain and how it interacts with your bloodstream, but they couldn't see the bare reality before them. And I'd always want to say to them, you do realize that while you're ranting at my drunken brain in your mother's house or your Section 8 housing or otherwise not personally obtained dwelling, that as a drunk, I pay rent, and I still manage to go to work every day, and I can't get fired for failing a drug test. Yeah, that's bullshit. Yeah, it probably is. But then again, I hold down jobs. And not even like counter-service jobs, like jobs that require you to do things like operate heavy machinery. Now, I'm well aware that life takes all kinds, and I've met plenty of people who I would classify as potheads who are perfectly functional. People who go about their day-to-day in the same fashion as anyone else, but also smoke a bowl every day or so. They do exist, and God bless them, and I'm not talking about them. But the fact is, the majority of serious potheads I've known throughout my life have continued to be potheads into adulthood and have done very little with their existence. A few knocked somebody up and tried turning their lives around, only to find out in their late 20s that they lacked any kind of skills or comprehension that a competitive market of determined people who didn't fuck off most of the time did have. I wish those poor bastards well, because they'll need more resolve than their own fucking shithead parents possessed when they were confronted with the same scenario. Once again, this isn't to say that all potheads or pot smokers are useless assholes. They aren't, and that would be a useless generalization. But what I will say is this. I've met more functional alcoholics than I have functional potheads. The reasons for this are as varied as they are subject to my own observations, but I still stand by it. I've met more barflies with union jobs and decent retirements awaiting them than I have serious potheads with anything even remotely close to it. Yes, Elon Musk smoked pot with Joe Rogan, fuck off. But you aren't Elon Musk. I'm not Charles Bukowski, and we ain't in fucking Kansas. Again, people who probably would have succeeded regardless of their chosen vice. There's an interview with Lemmy Kilmister about drugs on YouTube that's worth a watch, and he says some particularly interesting things about drugs that are usually pushed aside by the pro-pot people. I believe he said something to the extent of, sometimes the straight-edge people get it right. Pot is a gateway drug, because in order to get it, you have to be around people who are on drugs. There isn't a person I know who smokes weed who doesn't also know a guy. This becomes slightly less true as legalization goes on, but let's be honest. We all know someone who could hook us up with something less than conventional. Hell, I don't even smoke weed, and I could probably make a few phone calls and get a hold of some good stuff. Just as a drunk always needs another drink, so too does the stoner need another avenue. The problem with pot, I think, is that it tends to nullify, requiring the addition of other substances to enhance. Drunks tend to be satisfied with drinking till they piss themselves or some other shameful occurrence happens to them. I've started relationships on this basis. The fact is that according to my observed reality, that all the people who were huge potheads in high school stayed that way. They were numb people working low-end jobs with low-end drug tests that they could buy fake piss to pass. People with no ambition and no goal, no end, nothing more serious than the existential dread everyone else has to make do with. Yeah, life sucks like that, but it requires a complex system of everyone doing what they can and being held to a standard of stupid bullshit like showing up on time and doing what you're supposed to every day that makes everything happen. The potheads I knew then are the potheads I know now. They did nothing, accomplished little, and are now staring down the barrel of middle-aged burnout having done shit. I see boring people reliving the same shit they were living 10 years ago and having very little to show for it. I am utterly convinced that weed has a destructive effect on a person's drive and have seen very little in my 31 years on Earth to prove otherwise. To that point, the successful potheads that I do know are typically people who didn't start fucking with the stuff until they were in their 20s. Good for them. It's akin to booze in that way, I suppose. Yes, way better for you, not as harmful, sure, yeah, fuck off. Why do I prefer drunks to stoners? Well, as stated earlier, I've met more functional drunks than I have functional potheads. This could be because of the social stigma on pot, such that it existed at all. I mean, I grew up in a podunk nowhere, and pot was as readily available as anything else was, but let's even go with that. Maybe society hasn't really caught up with the reality of widespread legalized pot smoking. I think that's a crock of steaming shit, but let's accept that premise for an argument. Society at large is more accepting of reality than media or school would have you believe. Cool, I'm with you there. A drunk person is liable to do anything. If you encounter a drunk at a bar, they could stumble up to you asking you what's wrong. They could demand you stop looking at their woman. They could ask if you want to play a game of pool. They could look deep into your eyes and start sobbing, telling you that you look just like their son who just died last month. They could tell you that they like your Metallica shirt. They could tell you that, plus the fact that Metallica sold out when they cut their hair. They could just come up and clock you. A drunk could do anything, and therein lies my preference. Drunks don't typically attempt subterfuge, and when they do, they suck at it. But they have a passion. A disgusting, blatant, ugly, guttural, primal passion. I don't buy into the idea that a drunk man's words are a sober man's thoughts, but while I think it's wrong on the whole, it may not be wrong on the principle. A drunk is a passionate idiot towards whatever they are doing at the time, as singular or badly executed as it may be. That drunk asshole is gonna get that key into his door. She's gonna type that text to her ex. They're gonna do whatever it is they are setting their mind to. It's pathetic, it's sloppy, but it at least has the bent of being 100% authentic. If you've ever comforted anyone getting sloppy after a breakup, you'll know what I'm talking about. Yeah, it's shitty. Yeah, it's pathetic and boring to you, the outsider. But it's heartfelt, and currently occupying every booze-soaked neuron of that poor prick's brain. Whereas with potheads, yeah, the likelihood of getting decked for no reason drops to almost zero. You get nothing. But nothing. Dull, boring pricks trying to wax philosophical in that boring way that teenagers who encounter Pink Floyd for the first time might. But it's coming from a grown adult who has somehow fumbled their way into adultness. A dead-eyed, hey man, what? Bunch of bullshit that serves them no good and you even less. Drunks may be a bigger burden on society, but I'll take that over a non-existent entity also burdening society any fucking day. A boring fucking personality-less empty fucking person who hasn't had a passionate thought since they left the womb. The heater is still on, but the cat left with the woman. She eventually went to bed. As the fat bastard scratches at the door, she lets him in. He plumps his fat ass down in front of the heater and looks at me. I pet him and scratch his back. He rises, as driven as can be to get as much petting from a single effort as possible, in that way that cats and drunks do, and slumps over on his side with an audible thud. I'm on beer 8 for the night, so I decide to slump down on my side next to him. He meows like a bloated seal, and I pet him a bit, and we both lie there, content as can be. Say what you will about drunks. We don't lack for spirit.